1. When I was a dumb kid, my brother and I were playing around on the stairs. I was at the top jumping around in a pillowcase. I slipped, obviously, and went tumbling down backwards. Everything went into slow motion as things sometimes do when your life is in peril. As I was flipping over and over, the back of my skull getting closer by the second to smashing it into the hard concrete basement floor, I noticed a movement coming from the dark basement. Suddenly, a large bag of dog food flew across the room as if it were hurled by an invisible hand with absurd precision and interposed itself between my head and the floor. My skull smashes into the bag in a millisecond later, spraying kibbles instead of skull fragments around the room. My brother and I were both slack-jawed and confused. The flying bag had traveled at least 10 feet, likely saving me from death or serious injury. I used to think this was evidence for God or angels, or that I have some kind of purpose, but I realize this is evidence for nothing in particular except that life is bizarre and unexpected things can and do happen. Number 2. My mom was diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer in 2009. It was a struggle, and the doctors didn't expect her to pull through, but she did like a champ. My mom is a fighter, and as she puts it, refused to let cancer kick her ass. Fast forward to 2012, and she decided to undergo reconstructive surgery. The surgery goes well, and she is put into recovery. She spends a day drifting in and out of consciousness, which was expected after surgery like that. The whole time, she is still hooked up to a morphine drip to help her pain. After being reassured by the doctors that everything was fine, we decided to go to our homes and shower and sleep. My sister elects to stay, just in case anything goes down. Fast forward to the next morning, and my sister is calling me in tears saying I need to get to the hospital right now. I rush up to the hospital and am pulled aside by the doctors and told that my mom has suffered some complications from the surgery and is in a coma. A half an hour goes by, and my stepdad, I live by myself closer to the hospital, and the doctors pull him and I into her room. They say that her lungs are filling with fluid at a fast rate. They say she is unlikely to recover, and we need to make a decision to keep her on life support or pull the plug. We refuse to let her go down like that. 3 days go by, and my mom starts showing some cognitive activity. By the end of the week, she fully wakes up. The relevant part happens after she wakes up. She looks at my stepdad and I and asks when we came into the room. We tell her we've been here all week. She seemed really dumbfounded by this and replies she has only been in the room for a day or two. She then asks where her grandmother had gone. This creeped us out. My great-grandmother passed away in early 2007. When my stepdad tried to explain this to her, she replied that she had spent the last couple of days with her talking about the family. She said that grandma got really weird and told her that she can't give up because she had children to take care of. According to my mom, around the time grandma said this, mom became aware of us being in the room and grandma was gone. It was really weird to hear her talk about it. To this day, she has no recollection of being in a coma. She knows she was now, but all she can remember is spending a few days in a hospital with my grandmother, talking about the family. Number 3. It was on a little notepad stuck on the fridge with a magnet. The note said, "Rise and shine, Claire." It was in my father's handwriting. The note was found on September 8th, 1999, and he died on September 13th, 1997. I know it wasn't fake because he had something called benign familial tremor or essential tremor, so his writing was really shaky. My 2 daughters, neither of whom lives with me, absolutely deny any joke on their part. It was something he always said to me when it was time for me to get up to go to high school, some 30 years ago. The notepad was blank. When I went to bed the night before, I can't explain it, but I think it really is great that my father hasn't forgotten me. Number 4. Several years ago, my husband and I purchased metal detectors and started what is now an addictive hobby. Most all the places we go to are places that stink with history, even my backyard. After a few seconds, I will place my headphones back on my head and continue to search. This happened many times, and each time it happened, my metal detector would give me a signal, and I would dig. Most every time this happened, I would find a nice item for our collection. At first, it scared me to hear the voices, but now I'm used to them. I only hear them when I'm concentrating on my detector. It sounds like several men in a conversation, but I can't make out what they are saying. I also get strange urges to go in certain directions while detecting, and when I do, it always turns out to be to my advantage. I looked out my hallway one day towards the field that my husband was in metal detecting. As I passed, I saw a dark figure standing beside him. Then he began to dig. I continued what I was doing in the house. Later he came in and I asked him what he found, and he told me a flat button and handed it to me. He wanted to know how I knew he found it, and I told him I saw someone standing there with him waiting while he was digging the button up. Number 5. Years ago, we lived in an apartment house with my aunt, uncle, and cousins. For years, my older cousin would start screaming, and when my aunt would run in and to check on her, she would say there is a man at the end of her bed, and that he came out the closet. In future years, we had all moved out of the house, and Harry, the guy who bought it, had gone out with my cousin, the one who had insisted that the man was at the end of her bed. He had some very disturbing things happen to him in the house. Brooms would fly across the room. Window shades would have cutouts of boys and girls on them, almost like paper dolls. A fellow worker told him he had driven by the house and asked what he was doing up in the attic. He had seen the lights blaring. Harry found this strange because there were no electrical power in the attic. As much as he tried, he could not rent the upstairs apartment. I know one family rented the apartment but left the one night and left most of their things behind because one of the family members thought there were a little man standing at the end of her bed. My brother and I ran into some weird things in the basement of the house. It was divided into 2 sections. There was a small room off of the main basement that had a chair, pool table, and an old refrigerator. We were down there one day, and the pool balls started to roll around the table by themselves. We nervously figured that the table wasn't leveled and mentioned this out loud when the balls started to click together in pairs. So much for the table being off balance. I saw my aunt at the party not too long ago, and she had said that many years ago, one of my cousins had seen a psychic at a carnival for what she thought would be a joke, and she asked her about the house and the man in the bedroom. She told my cousins that, of course, you see him because he was murdered there and he is trapped inside the house. I think it would be interesting to have someone check out the house to see what is going on.